writing, recording history, but also that idea to forgive and to be forgiven, and that's very important, I mean, in the word it does say, it's like those who do not forgive will not be forgiven. And, it's like, I want to say, I'm sorry, I don't know how.
They don't know how.
I don't know how to say this to my daughter. I don't know how to say this to my wife. I don't, and yeah, and I think the chaplain can definitely be a huge help with that.
When your mortality is sitting right in front of you, then you become more anxious to take care of this business.
Yeah.
And it gives freedom to the person who's passing and freedom to the person who's living.
Yeah.
No Mundo.
Well, hey, everybody, it's Jory here with No Mundo. I'm really excited about today because I'm here with a good friend of mine, Dave Hugger. Hugger. Okay, he's a hugger.
I'm a good friend, and you're just learning my name.
I know. It's funny because I know a Huggard.
Oh, okay.
And her name's Mary. She's a food kitchen.
Yeah, I know Mary. Yeah,
and I don't know why, but between your two names, is he the Hugger or is he the Huggard? So I don't feel too bad.
I have the same kind of problem.
Well, today I wanted to talk to you about it's just funny. You're probably gonna read the title of this video and be like, does this pertain to me? You know what? It's funny. I actually thought the same thing when you told me you wrote a book. And stuff. And it's funny. And actually, it's funny how the book's it's not funny how the book's written, but how people are actually in the book. You're actually challenging that thought. It's like, well, I don't know why I would need to read a book like this.
Exactly right. People think hospice and they think death. And of course, hospice does come in at the end of life.
Sure.
But truthfully, hospice brings all these different things into your home. And I hate to tell people this, but we all have a terminal illness. Sooner or later, we're all going to face the last days of our life.
I think you said something like, it's like as soon as you were born, your ticker started, your countdown did. Yeah. I mean, and it's not a lack of faith to say something like
That's
that.
right. It's not gloom and doom.
Right.
People who have faith, it's not supposed to be any gloom at all.
Right.
We've got this great eternity that God has planned for us. So
I know, I think before we get into the book, though, I'd like to kind of get some background, get some ice broke here. Do you remember how we met?
You sang at my church.
That's right. Yeah, you were a pastor of Third Day.
Before we merged and became Parkway.
Yeah, that's where you're at now. And that's actually where we're filming. It was funny because I was leading worship here. I was helping with the team at this church. And Jeremy Sharp, I think, was a worship leader at your church at the time. He just texted me like a Friday or it might have been Saturday night. And he was like, hey, I'm going out of town. Go ahead. Would you be willing to come lead worship at our church? I was like, I don't know anybody at the church. I don't know the team, and he was like, don't worry about it. I'll let pastor know. Well, I think you got the text like as you were coming to church that morning.
Yes.
I just remember you walking in and going, say, hey, I don't know who you are, but I trust Jeremy enough to, it's like, hopefully we'll see how this goes, and I think it solidified something. We had a great time, and
it was a wonderful Sunday. I thank you for coming.
It was great, and we've been connected ever since.
I thought that's the first time I met you. Then interactions through the years, and then you moved to Balco, I think, or the church up there.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And but some of your family attend church here.
Yeah, right.
And so when the churches merge, my church and the Journey Church merge, then I got to know the rest of your family or parts of your family. You got a big family.
Let's before we get into the book, I'd like to kind of get, because you even talk about this in the book a little bit about your journey. Were you born in a Christian home?
No, I was not a Christian home. And at 6 years old, I was born in Lansing, Michigan. About 6 years old, 5, 6, we moved to this house that I didn't like. It was a scary house. I had friends in my old neighborhood, and anytime you move and you're a kid, it's brutal, or it can be. But the little neighborhood girl next door, her name was Cheryl. We're still friends with this girl, by the way.
You're 6.
I was 6 and she was 7.
Okay.
And she was Catholic. And her and her sister were Catholic. And they invited me to the Protestant Bible school.
Okay.
And in our neighborhood, there was this little Salvation Army church.
Sure.
I didn't know what Salvation Army Church was. I didn't know what Bible school was. I didn't know any of this stuff. But I wanted friends. And then she said, honestly, if you come, they'll give you a fudgesicle. And I was like, cha-ching. And my 6-year-old words was like, I get a fudgesicle?
Yeah, right.
So I go to Bible school. It was a Thursday in August. The lesson I hated, the craft I hated, the little macaronis, you're gluing them on this
Sure.
piece of board, this make a rainbow or whatever it was. I hated the songs. I mean, these action songs, Oh Stop and Let Me Tell You, and all these, I hated it. It's like I felt like a fool.
Yeah.
I'm 6 years old. I said, I feel like a fool doing this.
Right.
But afterwards, they gave me a fudgesicle. And I said, well, it's 2 hours, but I got fudgesicle. Okay, it was worth it. Yeah. And then the little lady named Mrs. Spiker, who was running this small community outreach for the Salvation Army, says, if you come back tomorrow and bring a friend, you get another fudgesicle. And I go, I've got a sister. It's the first time I was ever happy I had one. So I went home and told my 5-year-old sister, we're going to Bible school tomorrow. And she goes, why? And I said, fudgesicles. And we came, and on that day, it was the last day of Bible school, they presented the gospel on a flannel graph.
Okay.
The people who are watching this, who are my age, remember what flannel graphs were. It was very creative and edgy at the time. Little pictures, Jesus stuck to a board, and then they moved it around.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, and it's like, and I listened to the gospel.
Sure.
And afterwards, Mrs. Spiker asked, does anybody want to accept Jesus Christ as their Savior?
Mm.
And I went forward
Sure.
and accepted Christ. So I go home and tell my dad that I accepted Jesus at Bible school because Mrs. Spiker told me to tell your dad, tell your mom and dad. So I go home and tell him. Mrs. Spiker was, very evangelical and with the sweetest heart ever. She didn't have bad intentions on me, but my dad chewed me out for accepting Jesus.
Sure.
Mrs. Spiker then came to my house, and said to me that you should come to Sunday school. And I said, okay, when is it? I didn't even know Sunday school was on Sunday. And so I started going to Sunday school. My dad got mad, but it was only a block away. And so I started walking, my sister and I, and later my 2 little brothers, we'd walk the block and a half to church on Sunday morning. And then, I don't know, maybe when I was 12, she said, you need to start staying for church. You're old enough to stay for church. And there was only 25 people in this church. Mm-hmm. And so I stayed for church, and my dad was never happy about it. Then when I changed my life dream from being a lawyer when I was 14 or 15 to become a minister, he was very unhappy. He prophetically said over me, you'll never make any money doing that. Mm. So I don't have as much money in the bank as my dad thinks I should have, but I've got so many other blessings.
You're rich in joy and rich.
Oh yeah. And by the time I was in my 40s, late 40s, my dad came around and said, "You made a good choice."
Amen.
So,
yeah. So here today we're going to be talking about your books.
Yes.
One author to another, and so this is the first one, right?
Hospice is a gift.
Hospice is a gift. Never let dying stop you from living. And then the second one is called Hospice, Alpha and Omega, a handbook for your hospice journey from the beginning to the conclusion of hospice services. Now, and you kind of explained to me when I got the books, they're on Amazon. I'll have the link in the description.
I appreciate you doing that.
Yeah, I'm excited for people because, like I said, I kind of want to give my background real quick about going into this book because actually, I remember the journey with you was I had wrote a couple books, and you were reaching out because you had a passion to write a book yourself.
Yeah.
And I was excited for it. It's like, I know you were just talking earlier, Harry, like, it's like having your name on a book there's just something about that, and I was excited for it. And you were kind of asking, what are some softwares? What are some different things do you use and stuff? And we talked about it. And then, man, it felt like 3 days later, I'm done. That's what it felt like.
It wasn't quite 3 days.
That's what it felt like. But you're done. It's like, I got my second one done now too. No, but it was so cool. And I was like, oh, that's awesome.
I should say the difference between my book and your book is these are short, spiffy books.
Sure.
And so each one of these is like a chapter and a half of your book, So,
but I wanted to see because it's like yours is packed with some good stuff.
Yeah.
And the thing is sometimes, I think you definitely have more books and you write well.
Well, thank you.
You do. And I was very impressed then. But I was saying though about the whole hospice is like, what does a 34-year-old need to read a hospice book for? Right.
Right.
And it's funny because when I started reading the book, I read the whole book in one sitting because I couldn't put it down. And like, if you see my Kindle action, it's highlighted.
I saw it. I saw your Kindle action. Yeah. When you said you read it, I checked my account. And at that time, Kindle updates it like every half hour.
Okay.
And you were half done with you got credit for half, and then I checked a little bit later, and you'd read the whole book.
Yeah, I couldn't put it down. And like I said, going into it, I was like, and my wife was actually the one to come inspire me. She's like, why don't you interview Pastor Dave, and stuff. And I was like, yeah, it's like, but I should read his book first, and I kept, kind of trying to find time to do it. It's like, I'll get to it. And I was like, no, I'm going to do it right now. I was like, you know what? I got time. I'm going to do it right now, and I read it, and I'm just like highlighting. So I was like, that is so good. That is so good. And right in the middle of the book, it seemed like you just literally answered, like, you're probably reading this thinking, why do I need to read a hospice book?
Yeah.
And it's like, here's the answer. And we're going to go into that now. I don't want to just like dissect the whole book because I want people to read it and stuff. But I want to ask some questions. I want you to kind of tell some stories.
Okay.
I've kind of highlighted some of the things that I was like, that's pretty deep. That's pretty profound, and stuff. I'd like to kind of have you pull that apart for me if you're okay with that.
Yeah.
So people are going to watch this. People are going to read. I love about your book is anyone can read it.
Yes.
You're coming from a Christian perspective, a Christ follower, a believer in Christ, a believer in Bible, but anybody can read this book.
Anybody.
Yeah. And I love that and stuff, but you do still share the faith. The faith gets in there, and you say you use a lot of biblical analogies. And what great thing about biblical analogies is they're truth, and truth sets you free.
Truth sets you free. And if people will, the truths in the Bible are true for Christians and non-Christians. The reaping and sowing. It's good for Christians and non. Generosity is good for Christians and non-Christians. Of course, I promote become a Christian, but the principles are the same for everybody.
It's funny you say that because I went through a season when I was reading books. I was reading all these like books by rich guys, just a bunch of billionaires, right? And it's so many funny. They started talking about their principles, what they live by. He's like, this: if you want to be rich, this is what you need to do. And it was so funny how many of the things that they said were scriptural.
Biblical.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep. It was funny because people they get a bad rap. The 1%, they're just greedy and stuff. Every single one of the books said, give, be charitable.
Yep.
There's
study after study has proven that generosity does something in your mind that brings you joy. Yeah. And just being even a little generosity. So the biblical truths, I love them. And so they're all in this book.
Yeah, it's good. And that's what I love about it. It's like maybe it's like, well, I'm not a Christian, so I don't think I should read the book. You can read this book and you'll get something out of it. It's great.
Yep.
So when I read the book, for me, the all-over summary was the misconception that if you go on hospice, you're giving up.
And that misconception, especially in some Christian circles.
Sure. I that's where I saw it the strongest.
It's so wrong. Truthfully, we all have a day. And we don't know when the day is. And you have a day, I have a day. And because I have faith, I trust God for that day, but I trust him for every day, including that day. Yeah. But we try to forget that day. It's a part of being human. We just forget that day. We want to forget that day. Even people who have been told by their doctor, you've got 3 months to live. They don't want to think about that day.
Yeah, sure.
They still don't want to think about that day.
Yeah.
And you're actually not giving up. And one of the analogies I use in here is I would talk to people, especially who are Christians, and say in John 10:10, Jesus says, I've come to give you life abundant.
Yep.
And so as a hospice chaplain, I want you to have an abundant life every day that you have. We want to help you live every day that you have, and we want to help you on the last day that you have. I think the statistic is somewhere around 15 to 20%. I'm not sure of people who come off hospice. We call it graduate from hospice. They get better.
Yeah.
And so, and part of the reason why they get better is because hospice care comes into your home, helps balance the medications, provides better service, better attention. You're connected closer to a nurse and a doctor, and they discover things that maybe there's an adjustment in the meds, or maybe there's a hope that can come. And so we've had people graduate from hospice 2 or 3 times where they're on hospice for 6 months and then they don't need us anymore. Yeah. Call us when you need us again. And so that was just kind of, hospice is not a death sentence.
Right. I think we help them live. Well, if you're helping them live, they're going to live. Also we say there's still a day. I get that.
Right.
But it's like you're helping them live.
And if you are living with chronic pain, like many people who have terminal illnesses, and we can help relieve that pain, then lo and behold, you had a good day.
Sure.
And how many good days do you have? Who knows? But let's have as many as you can.
My grandpa, my cousin started coming to church. He wasn't a believer at the time, but God was really tugging on his heart. So he was coming. Our grandpa, he was up there, and he was in the hospital, I believe it was. And that's what I love about being led by the Spirit, because we have the Bible and we follow the Bible, we follow the Word, but there's certain things that it doesn't say, go do this job or go get this call. It doesn't say that stuff. So that's why we have the Spirit, and those every day we wake up and we live. And that's part of that abundant life, is having the Holy Spirit in your life to guide you and lead you in victory. But my grandpa was in the hospital, and I remember my brother, my cousin, going up to the altar because Pastor had asked if people wanted prayer for anything. So he came up and he was asking Pastor, "Can you pray for my grandpa? He's in the hospital." And I knew what he was praying for. I was over on the side, and I started praying, but I just felt my heart's like, no. He's ready to go home. He's ready. He's not. It's not a giving up thing. He's at peace. He is ready to go see Jesus. And it's funny, after church, I had my pastor. Pastor, he said, I didn't pray for him to get out of that bed. I knew in my heart he was ready.
Right.
And it was okay. You always have to balance it, because sometimes it's like, it's even Jesus said, whenever she's like, well, I know he'll come back in the resurrection. Jesus said, I am the resurrection. When it's like, so it's just living day to day in that faith. It's like, Lord, where are we in this situation? Should we be praying for this? And you said, being honest, actually, I'll bring that up. It says the family should never hide the truth from their loved ones. They should have the opportunity to take care of unfinished business. I think that's huge.
So many times people say, well, don't tell Grandma she's on hospice. And I think, why? Well, she'll give up. No.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean she's going to give up. It means you give her opportunity. There's things that she needs to do. Maybe there's things she needs to say. There's things maybe we need to hear. And by playing this game with people, she deserves the truth. And really what they're saying is, we aren't ready to hear the truth, so don't tell Grandma. If we don't tell Grandma, it's not true to us either.
And I think that feeling from the family is not wrong, but it's like the action can be wrong.
The action we were,
but the heart, it's like, I'm not ready for this. I'm not ready to lose Mom. I'm not ready to lose Dad. And you coming in reminds me of this is happening, and I get that. But I said, we still want them to know.
Yet almost every time when I'm sitting there visiting with them, people know.
Yeah.
Even though they're and the incidents that I record in the book are, don't tell my kids I know what's going on. It's like nobody wants to keep this big secret. But she was ready.
Yeah,
she was ready.
And in the end, it's your journey. Yeah. In the end, in the very end of it, you got a family, you got all these people that are your love, but in the end, it's you and Jesus. In the end, that's really what it is. Stuff. And if you're like, I don't know. Do you know who Smith Wigglesworth is?
Oh yeah.
Did you ever hear about how his wife passed?
No, I don't remember.
So he was in ministry somewhere far away, and back then they'd take trains everywhere. And he got a telegram. She died, or she was dying, or something like that.
I know her maiden name was Firestone. Did you know that?
I didn't know that. Yeah, the tire company.
I think she may be related there, but certainly she was a girl from the Salvation Army, like me.
He talked about Salvation Army.
We met a girl in the Salvation Army.
But by the time he got home, she had died. He said, in the name of Jesus, you come back. And she did. She came back. But she said, I don't. And she wasn't mean about it. She was just like, I love you, Will, but I want to go back. I don't want to stay here anymore. I've seen him, and they said they talked for about an hour, just sat around the bench. And he finally goes, okay. And she goes, you can go. And she closed her eyes and left, But it was, he was like, no, it's my wife. No, you come back. And she was like, I've seen Jesus. I don't want to be here anymore. I love you, but I'm good.
Yeah.
And that it is that her journey was like, I'm good. I'm good. And then we have to hear that,
And to help people come to that point, it's a blessing. Yeah. I found hospice chaplaincy to be the most productive ministry I've ever done.
You talked about, in the beginning of your book, you talked about how it's like, I did a funeral or something, and you're like, I loved it.
I liked it. I know this sounds weird. I'd rather do a funeral than a wedding. Funerals are opportunity. Yeah. Funerals are opportunities or challenges to bring peace to people who are broken. And most of the time at a funeral, everybody listens. At weddings, nobody listens. Just let's get to the reception.
That's like a huge opportunity for the gospel. It's like death is going to, like you said, it's going to happen to everyone. We're going to meet the Maker. Every person on earth is going to meet the Maker someday, and you're going to be held accountable. And it's like, and you're going to have to. Where were you?
And after the funerals that I did when I was young, people, the funeral directors, who hear funeral sermons all the time, would compliment me and say, I can't believe you brought peace to this room.
Yeah.
And well, it wasn't my peace.
Sure.
Yeah, I know where the peace came from.
Right.
But I just started doing funerals all the time.
Yeah.
A couple funeral homes just called me. If they're unchurched, we'll get Dave.
Yeah.
So that was in northern Michigan. Down here, they've got a bigger selection of preachers to fill that pool. I still get called from though.
It's funny that we're talking about hospice because you're retired. So it's not like some company in town's going, it's like, I'm paying Dave right now to do this podcast. It's like you have a passion for it.
I retired from hospice chaplaincy about 2 years ago. I did it for 11 years. I sat with hundreds of people as they passed. And people would always say, I could never do that. I could never do that. But when you sit in a room with someone who's passing, there isn't a joy in that for me. I mean, it's not like I'm happy. It's
It's like,
let's see, Disney World or, no, it's not, it doesn't compare. Yeah. But especially when you're with saints, when they go home, it isn't a horrible event. Yeah. It is peaceful. There's a sense of the presence of God taking a loved one home. Now, when you sit in the room with someone who isn't saved, who doesn't have a spiritual foundation, sometimes it's a little different.
Sure.
They struggle a little bit more sometimes. In fact, secular studies have shown that when spiritual care is provided to people at the hospitals and in hospice, they use less pain medication. They prescribe less pain medication, there's less anxiety, there's less stress and worry. That's why hospice, which is government funded, requires a chaplain.
Sure.
They pay for the chaplain.
They say the government sees
necessity
that
for spiritual care.
Yeah.
Of course, it's the financial motivation of them, saves them money.
Sure.
And so the truth is proven that when that's provided, people change. Of course, I'm a big promotion of the spiritual care. The hospice nurses, I know it's all about the hospice nurse. Sure. The hospice social workers is all about, but I personally believe all you need is a chaplain and a CNA. Because the CNAs do things I'm not going to do.
Right. You said never let dying stop you from living. And I think that's when we come back, that's the book. That's what hospice is, until your last moment, until God calls you home. We want you to live an abundant life.
And that's the second chapter of the book. And it lists a whole bunch of things to do that I encourage people to do. One is you have opportunity to do bucket list things. You have opportunity to do all these, reconnect with people, seek forgiveness or give forgiveness. Yeah. Reconnect with your spiritual life. There's so many wonderful things that can happen that people stop doing when they hear, well, you've only got a few months to live. And truthfully, you should live every day that you can. I don't remember if this is in the first book or the second book, okay? But there was a man who lived in a nursing home here in the area, and he was mentally impaired.
Okay.
His whole life he's mentally impaired. Lived with his mom and dad until they passed.
Someone in that book like that, yeah.
And he was just a boy. Yeah. I mean, he was a 67-year-old boy, I think, but he was just a boy. And all he wanted was a cheeseburger, And we actually had we called it Bob Day. We got him all of us wore T-shirts, Happy Bob Day. Yeah. He loved it. He had a T-shirt that said, I'm Bob. and we went to Big Biscuit. And, Big Biscuit, I like Big Biscuit. I'm not knocking Big Biscuit, but it's not gourmet.
Yeah, sure.
It's not a gourmet burger.
Sure.
But that's where he liked to go with his mom and dad. They took him to Big Biscuit. Yeah. And so we sat in there. There was about 20 of us on Bob Day, and he was just so happy. And his sister came, and he died a couple weeks later, but he just, to do things on the bucket list, no matter what it is, to be able to provide those kind of things for people or coordinate them just is wonderful. So Bob lived a great day. Bob Day.
Yeah. Yeah. You talk about some principles, and I'd like to just kind of, we don't want to go depth because I want people to read the book. Some of the principles about this is set a goal. Can you go into that a little bit?
Well, many people, again, they give up.
Yeah.
Setting goals is a way to focus your mind on not giving up. I've got something to do. Now, maybe that is, I have a daughter or a granddaughter graduating from high school, and maybe it's a few months away, and the doctor may say, well,
You got a month.
you got a month.
Yeah.
Set the goal.
Yeah.
And it's amazing how many times people reach the goal, by the way.
There's almost like some faith in that.
There's some faith in that.
Believing for something.
In fact, that takes a lot of faith.
Yeah.
When the doctor's saying you got a month and your goal is 2 months down.
Well, let me kind of, because we talk about this in our church a lot. We pray for healing for a lot of people, and
Right.
We aren't dissing doctors. We are so grateful for doctors and the wisdom God has given men for medicine and all these things. And I remember this. My pastor's, someone's taking medication for a certain thing. He's never said, "So I'm praying for you. I'll just stop doing that."
Yeah,
no, he does.
That's foolish.
Pastor Hagen down at Rhema, he would always say, get a headache. So it's like just take the Tylenol, believe. It's like, but don't have a faith battle. It's like you take it and thank God that the healing working in your body. And stuff. It's okay. That's okay.
It's okay. I tell people all healing comes from God. If He chooses to use a pill or a doctor, hallelujah. And if He chooses to do a miracle, well, hallelujah.
Yeah. And that's the thing, though. It's like we're not, but it's like with that moment where it's like, the doctor gave you a month. It's like, well, the doctor said, so that's what it is. It's like, no. It's like, for the end, it's like if there's a will to live,
right.
There's power in that.
There's power in that.
Yeah.
And so many people have managed to, I don't want to say extend their life, because I think we have that day, okay, but have managed to live and enjoy their life because there's the goal. And so setting goals to do this or to do that or have this or experience this are all good things. Even if it's not something like a graduation or a wedding, I want to have a picnic with my family. That's a great goal. There's little things like that we can set goals for, and I just think that those things make your days better, if you're on hospice or not. Yeah, setting goals. It's a psychological
thing. Is a lot of things you're saying. It's like almost like some of these things. I won't say all of them. Some of these things you could do without hospice. But the thing is, because you don't know it, hospice helps you. It's like, hey.
Right.
It's like, hey, let's set goals. It's like, well, I could do that on my own. It's like, but you didn't, so here we are. It's like when maybe somebody it's like, I should set goals. How do I even do that? All right, let me sit down with you.
Let's sit down with you.
Yeah.
And like, I was teasing my grandson, Josiah, last week, who is in the 8th grade. And he asked me why I was exercising more. That's because I want to live 10 more years and see you graduate from high school.
Yeah.
And it took him just a minute to realize it's not going to take me 10 years to graduate from high school. I said, well, Si, you and I both know it might. And then he started laughing. Yeah. But we secretly set those goals anyways. Yeah. I mean, I want to see my son's graduate from grandson's graduate from high school. Yeah. But I don't know what my final day is, or I don't know if I'm getting close. But we set those, and so when we do that with a terminal illness, I believe it gives us some hope and some more power and more faith to be the man or woman we want to be and to have that abundant life that we talked about.
Yeah, the founder of Rhema, he I'm not say a lot of his stories I just remember because they're just so funny, and significant. But he always talked about Psalms 91. And the last verse, Psalms 91 says, with long life I will satisfy him and show him my salvation. And he always said, if I leave, he'll know I was satisfied. Is what he always said.
Right.
Stuff. And he said this. I don't know if it was a prophecy or what he said, but he said, this is how I'm going to die. That's what he said. And he said this to the congregation. He said, I'm going to be sitting down for breakfast, having my favorite meal. I'm going to look at my wife, tell her I love her, and I'm going to close my eyes. That is exactly how he died.
I've heard stories like that of people who
talk about a specific goal.
Determine how they're going to die. Yeah. And of course, it doesn't always work out, but I think in the book I mentioned the guy said he wanted to be married 50 years. And he refused to die. And the doctor said, you're not going to make it.
Yeah.
And he actually sort of went into a coma a few days before, and it wasn't going to happen. He'd already lived longer than the doctor said, but that ornery old guy, he lived until his 50th wedding anniversary.
Wow.
And he couldn't talk to his wife. He no longer had the ability to communicate. And she just said, I knew he was stubborn enough to push through that. And he was a very good Baptist man.
Sure.
And they had a great family, and I'm still friends with many people in the family, but the guy wasn't going to die. He's going to live.
Yeah.
And he did.
Yeah.
And then I got to help at his funeral. So it was kind of neat.
You also say to write or record your history and desires.
I think people miss out so much history from the generations before.
Something to be learned there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had one man who I begged him to write. I said, I'll bring a tape recorder. Let's just record your stories. Yeah. He had so many great, wonderful stories. He was a retired pastor, in fact. Nobody wants to hear him. Nobody wants to hear him. But that wasn't the truth.
No.
And he never did. Unfortunately, he never did.
Oh, man.
But I wish I knew more about my grandpa and grandma.
There was,
and my mom and dad.
There was, it's funny the things you find out around that time. 'Cause I know I've had people pass in my life, but there was actually a generation, they were diary people. And my great grandmother, we didn't know this, but we found a diary from when she was a girl.
Oh no,
and
that's great.
And it was amazing because it's like, I mean, of course, she raised me until I was like 10. I lived with my great grandma, but sweet old lady. But then, you've only known her as the old lady, the old grandma.
Yes.
You never knew her as the teenage girl, the sweetheart, the beauty, it's or whatever, stuff. And she's reading her diary, and she lived in Barnard, and she's writing, and I'm reading her diary, and she's talking about going down to Balco to this horse ranch or this horse place, this horse farm. And there was a boy in this farm who helped with the horses, and he was strapping, and she talked about it. You find out, you read through the diary, that's Grandpa.
Oh no, really?
Being Grandpa, and stuff. And they were in love. She was in love with them at the age of 12, 13. You never knew that.
You never knew.
And it's like, oh my gosh, it's an amazing story. It's one of those Hallmark.
Yeah, it's a Hallmark movie waiting to happen.
But she never talked about that, But then you write that stuff down. Yeah, there's so many stories.
So many stories, and I would add recipes.
Hers. She had the best cookies. And here's the weird thing though, is she must have kept something, because my grandmother's done it, my aunts have done it. It does not. I always joke. I said, well, grandma did it with love, and they're like, well, we do too.
It's a funny, one of the things I miss about my mom the most, and it's shameful, but it's goulash, and my wife makes goulash. I make goulash. Yeah. It's not my mom's goulash. I don't know what she put in it. Yeah. And I called my sister. I said, what did Mom put in her goulash? She goes, I don't remember. No one remembers my mom's goulash recipe. It's kind of funny. The one thing I'd ask my mother, if I could call and ask one question, what do you put in your goulash?
I just can't imagine on the last day. It's like, it's like, hey, come to the bedside. It's like, it's time. It's like, I say, okay, I move. Please, real quick, write the recipe down.
What we don't realize in that is that if the person is motivated to do it, what joy it brings.
Sure.
If I could have known, and I sat down with my mom and said, I've always liked what you did. How did you do it? So I can share it with my children.
So
it would have gave my mom joy to do that. Yeah. I didn't know to do it then.
And for her, it was just mom. She was just a mom. And she went out just like, I just fed my kids, you know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
It's like, no, that's a memory I'm going to keep for the rest of my life, And
as I talk about it, I can taste it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And but I think that's one thing about the story. It's like, wow, I mean, yeah, that happened in my life. No, tell us the story. We love that story.
Tell the story.
The war stories, just, you talk about how those are a little harder for especially veterans and stuff.
Right.
And you actually tell the story in your book about he made a mistake. Are you okay with telling about that story?
Right.
I love so it was, kind of go the background about why that he was struggling with forgiveness for himself.
Forgiving himself. And in fact, my next series of books are called The Chaplain Chronicles.
Yeah.
And my first novel is about a lady named Mary, but my second one is about this very man.
And he was a Christian, right?
Christian man. very active in his Baptist church. I believe he was a deacon. I'm not sure if they use that title, but I think he said he was a deacon.
Okay.
But he made a mistake in the military, and he
back in World War II.
Back in World War II, and the mistake dealt with hearing.
Well, you don't even know if he was. He doesn't know. He didn't know if he was the mistake.
Right. He didn't know. He would hear coordinates over the radio, share the coordinates with the gunner. The gunner would program the coordinates and shoot the artillery.
Right.
And I don't know back in World War II what the technology was, but that was the essence. He heard numbers, he shared numbers, they guy put them in, and they shot. And then you'd hear an explosion off in the distance, and you killed somebody.
Yeah.
Okay. They were the enemy.
Yeah.
But one time, he heard numbers, shared numbers, the artillery rifle or cannon fired, and the explosion was on the good guy's side.
Yeah.
And he doesn't know if anyone died.
Right.
He doesn't know. All he knows is that it didn't go where it's supposed to go. And he was tormented by that fear.
For years.
Yeah. He said he had dreams at night about, did I hear the wrong numbers? Did I say the wrong numbers?
The what if?
Did this guy put in the wrong numbers, which means he would be totally off the hook. But it was just a mistake. Yeah. It was a mistake that haunted him. Yeah. Well, many people have things in their history that haunt them. And I will say this because I really believe it's true even with me. There's things you can say to the hospice chaplain that comes in, and it's your last days, that you can't say to your own pastor.
Yeah.
You can't say to your own best friend. You can't say to your children.
Yeah.
And so he said this to me, and it was like absolutely amazing to hear him, and heartbreaking to hear him share the torment for a mistake. Yeah. At worst, it was a mistake.
Yeah.
But to help him come to peace with it was such a blessing.
I think you hit it on the dot with the whole, it's like, I can't even say this to my pastor, but, it's like just someone else who's of the faith, it's like, sometimes it helps when it's like they don't know a lot about you. And so you're able to say, I'm coming with no, not that a pastor would, but biased or information in the back that's going to help them filter, things that, you're nervous. Like, what are they going to say if I tell them this? It's like, I don't know anything about you. So you're a clean slate with me.
Right.
But I have faith and tell me what's going on, and no one else needs to know. If you want me to tell someone, I will, but as I'm, and I think there's help.
And there's also, I don't think I talk about this in the book, but there are things that sometimes people need to tell loved ones and they can't.
Yeah.
And so when they talk to the hospice chaplain or the hospice social worker, I've done it more than once where I said, is there something you want me to tell somebody and you want me to wait till after you pass?
Yeah.
And they say yes. Yeah. They never wanted to deal with it themselves for whatever reason. Yeah. Most of the time, people beat themselves up a whole lot more than they need to. Me included.
Sure.
Usually the people who love you are going to understand and accept and say, oh, okay. Like the man with the military, his kids wouldn't have been any less.
And it was all about, they wanted to give him military honors.
They wanted to give him
no way. And they're like, well, why wouldn't you?
Why wouldn't?
And he hadn't told them that.
He never told them.
Yeah.
And so they would have thought no less of him.
Yeah.
The beating he was taking was self-inflicted.
Was unnecessary.
Satan tormented that guy for years about that one thing.
Yeah. That's so I'm seeing another benefit of hospice, the chaplain especially coming in, it's like, I'm just here, it's like, tell me what you want to say. It's like, there's no judgment here. I'm here to just walk with you,
right.
Through this day, not tomorrow, not yesterday, right. Just right now. We're living abundantly right now. And if you're not living abundantly, my goal is to help you by the end of the day. We're living there.
Yeah, we're going to live there. The worst thing, it's not in my book, the worst thing that ever happened to me in hospice, it happened just about the time I started. The chaplain that was before me was unable to get in many people's homes. So I would call these people who said no to her after meeting her, don't come back, and ask if I could come.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a very high percentage of them say yes.
Yeah.
And so I called this one family, and the man said, "Are you a Christian chaplain?" And I said, "Yes, I am." And he goes, "Well, I'm a Christian too."
Mm-hmm.
Okay, this is the man's son.
Sure.
I question the accuracy of that statement.
Sure,
After what he said,
Sure.
he said, "I don't want you to come to my house." I said, "Why?" He goes, "My dad's going to hell, and I don't want you to talk him out of it." Pardon?
No.
Pardon?
Yeah. Right.
What did you say? And he repeated it. Yeah. "My dad's going to hell, and if you come here, you'll talk him out of it." He didn't want his dad to get saved. So I question the accuracy of his statement that I'm a Christian,
Right. Yeah,
but apparently the family dysfunction was so great that the son said that, and I didn't put that.
The fact that you would believe in that reality and you'd have the strength.
Believe in heaven and hell and not want your dad to go.
Yeah. I actually had this conversation with someone the other day. They were talking about their mom, and they said, "I'm going to play Highway to Hell at her funeral." I was like, "I don't say that." And she's like, No, you don't know her. I was like, "I don't have to. There's no person in the world I could think of that I'm like that I would ever desire that for." And it's like, I get it. People have trauma. I mean, people already listen and say, "Well, you don't know my dad, Jory. You don't know my mom." Yes, there's a lot of messed up things going on in the world, but if we understood eternity,
right?
If we really, my thing is, when I think of it, it's almost I would say, forgive the Lord. They don't know what they're saying because they don't get eternity. They don't get what this is, and that's rough.
So I don't ever know what happened to that man other than he passed on hospice services, but no chaplain was allowed in.
And I want to kind of go into that forgiveness about your principle, principle about writing, recording history, but also that idea to forgive and to be forgiven. And that's very important. I mean, in the Word it does say, it's like those who do not forgive will not be forgiven. And sometimes people they need help with it. It's like, I want to say I'm sorry. I don't know how.
They don't know how.
I don't know how to say this to my daughter. I don't know how to say this to my wife. I don't, and I think the chaplain can definitely be a huge help with that.
The hospice staff facilitates that. And when your mortality is sitting right in front of you, then you become more anxious to take care of this business.
Yeah.
And it gives freedom to the person who's passing and freedom to the person who's living.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because, sometimes the hurt goes both ways.
Sure.
And so when we have those opportunities to have that freedom, there's peace that comes in your heart. By the way, that's a principle, just like these other ones talk about. Whether you've been told to go on hospice or not, be open to forgiving and being forgiven. There's peace that comes with that. Torment that comes throughout your whole life if you don't do it.
I'm probably pretty confident if I said you probably dealt with this. There are people that have went through offense for years, decades in a family that now they're regretting, why did I waste so much time with my dad, my mom, or my daughter, or my son, being this. And now it's too late, And so you can almost, yes, we are at those final days, but it's like, it doesn't have to be too late. We can take care of it right now. Let me help you.
Let's get it done.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when that happens, it makes the last day so much better.
Yeah. Because there's a pain that's not even physical that you can help deal with too. The medicine can't fix. It's like the chaplain can help with a pain that's spiritual.
I would guess that pain hurts more.
That's good. Yeah. Yeah, I would say so.
The pain that medications can't help hurts me.
I said that's why I like to see that what hospice can bring to a situation. Like I said, it's not giving up because guess what? You say in your book, there's someone who went off hospice. At least they went off hospice 3 times. So that means they beat it, or they had to take it down twice.
They improved,
not beat it, but
they improved.
Yeah, and that's awesome. And it's not like a chaplain's going, "Oh, dang it,"
No one on hospice gets mad.
No, no, of course not.
Funny thing is, sometimes the clients get mad when we have to come to them and say, all your vitals are good. The doctor no longer says you're terminal. I mean, we're all terminal, but the doctor can no longer say you have 6 months to live. Right. And that's the initial parameter for hospice, that the doctor has to say that you most likely have less than 6 months to live. Okay. There's no guarantees.
Sure.
But you've been on hospice now for a year and you haven't declined. In fact, you've improved. And so then they get mad. well, you're not going to come see me anymore.
Well, I'm guessing there's probably things you guys find within hospice that it's like the reason you may even find a solution to why the health is where it's at,
Right.
and tweak it. And it's like that's the only reason they were going down. They were going downhill was because this thing was loose, and it's like we plugged the hole, and now they're fine.
Sometimes caregivers don't know how to take care of the situation, the symptoms, and when we can get the symptoms under control, then the decline stops.
Yeah.
And then when you give people hope, the goals and the reignite their fire to live, all of a sudden you've done your job you've done your job so well that they don't need hospice anymore. So hospice people generally are happy that someone is graduating off hospice, but we've built the relationships with them, and we tell them, and in fact, the hospice benefit, which is paid for by the government, there's no penalty for leaving. You can leave, and then when it's necessary again, give us a call. We'll come back. There's no penalty. There's no questions. There's nobody gets mad, and you can come back, and we'll embrace your family again. But one lady on hospice 3 times.
As you were talking about that, I thought about again the idea, and people say, the family, it's like they're faith people, and it's like, mom's gonna live, so we don't want to get hospice because that's not faith. But I'm thinking, our bodies, when we're having to do a lot of strenuous stuff, our mind's exhausted. It's hard to believe. It's hard to stay in faith sometimes because our mind's exhausted. Everything else is exhausted, right? What's so great about hospice is it's like you're taking care of your mom 24/7. Is she? I don't mean to be a handful. It's just so much going on.
Sometimes it is.
And it's like, and you're trying, it's like, no, she's going to get better, but you're just exhausted and all these things, and the hospital's like, hey, can we help? It's like, no, we believe she's going to get better. It's like, us too. Sure. But you look exhausted. Can we come in and help you?
Right.
And we'll believe with you. But, you're exhausted. We're going to come help you.
Right.
We can help with the things that you're doing.
The support that we give to the caregivers, especially if they're in a home. Sometimes people are in a nursing home, but if you're at home, the support we give the caregivers, to have someone come in, our aides, a hospice aide will come in 2 or 3 times a week and help with bathing. You know how hard it is to bathe a big person?
Yeah.
An adult, maybe a fragile person. They also offer, my hospice did, that the aide would say, I'm going to be here for an hour, hour and a half. If you want to go get the groceries or something, take a nap.
Yeah.
We're going to be here with your husband or your wife or your dad.
Yeah.
We're going to be here.
Yeah.
And there was one man whose wife was dying, it's dementia, and it was traumatic for him. They've been married a long time. I don't necessarily think this is a productive thing to do, but he liked to go to the bar and have a beer with his buddies.
Yeah.
And that was relaxing to him. And he gave his wife great care. But when he didn't want to talk to the chaplain, but when I came to talk to his wife, or when one of the aides came, he'd say, I'll be back in about an hour. And he would go down and have a beer with his buddies. But that was, for him, it was an hour apiece.
It was coping.
It was his coping mechanism. So
I think that's a very important thing though to people to know. It's like because it can be exhausting on you. It's like because I've been in a place where I'm hurting. My body's hurting, and I'm trying. I'm like, Lord, I believe that this pain's gonna go. But you're exhausted, so you start getting a little cranky. You're just like, and it's like hospice, like, hey, let us help carry the load.
Right.
It's like, I know this is hard on you. I've experienced. When my grandpa was passing, Grandma was taking care of him, and she was taken to the toilet. She was taken to the shower and stuff, and she was
extremely hard for her to do.
She would get upset. You could tell, and she was getting frustrated to the point where she was just saying not bad things, but she was saying things she never heard as a grandson, and stuff. And it's like, wow, she's upset. She's tired. She's tired, exhausted. And I could see now. Even look now, reading your book, it's like having even a couple hours, someone coming in every night would have been tremendously helpful for her. Yeah, I could see it. And we could still be able to say, Grandpa's gonna get better. But in the end, Grandpa's like, no, I'm good.
And then hospice also, there's some medical equipment that hospice provides that assists the caregivers. Now, I can't make a blanket policy. I can't say, well, whatever you need, you're going to get.
Sure.
But there are lots of things that are available. A hospice bed, a hospital bed in your house.
Huge help.
Oh, that cranks up and down. Oh, my gosh. If you need one of those, it's great.
Yeah.
And they're expensive.
Right.
But not on hospice. Yeah. They're provided. Yeah. And so there's all sorts of neat medical equipment that come to, I believe with 100%, it's great for the person who's passing. But the caregivers gain so much from it. And over again, I heard the story when people say, we didn't want hospice. We should have called you 3 months ago. Yeah, we didn't want it when it came in. Yeah. But after having it for a little while, we should have called you 3 months ago.
And my hope is with these books, David, is that people will read these and they won't have to have that experience.
Right.
Okay, I'm not giving up if I take hospice for mom, if I take hospice for dad. I see it now. This is going to help us. It's going to help. And it's like you're not being selfish. You're not, it's not, you're not making it about you. It's like this is actually for them,
Right.
You explained this to me when I asked you about the books. This one is more about the person, right?
Right.
Hospice.
Let's say you get told you need hospice.
Right.
And you don't know any, or maybe you just have some myths about hospice that you believe. Sure. And you want to know what it is. This book is for you. Right. Before you go on hospice, that book is for you. This book is for after you get on hospice, Hospice Alpha and Omega. And it talks about the services that are provided, who provides, what a nurse does, what the aide does, what the social worker does.
That's good.
What the chaplain does. The second book is about things that can happen, and even on the last days, things you will see happen. So when your loved ones, like their hands and feet will probably turn a little blue, and it's called modeling. But I relate that in a Christian way, that our body is wonderfully made by God.
Yeah.
And what the body does when you do not have enough oxygen or not processing enough, it cuts down blood supply to the extremities to keep it at the core. And so, but that's one of the things a loved one will see.
It'll freak you out.
It'll freak you out, but it really is just part of the process. And so in that book, it talks about what happens in your last days. And at the end of Hospice Alpha and Omega, it gives many days of Christian readings where, and I call it prayers and meditations, where it just talks about eternity. So you can read these quotes by people and scriptures and a prayer. The next time you want to read, it's about prayers for my journey, courage for my journey, my faith journey, suffering and journey. And they're all scriptures that relate to the subject matter so that the loved one can either read them to themselves or read them to the person who's passing.
Right. It's good. And it's because I remember I had that question when I was like, well, which one should I read for? What's the, and just read one, too. It's fine. But, if you're kind of in a certain boat, you just explain, read this one, read this one, you talked about, we talked about confession. We talked about forgiveness. I liked, you said this thing, dignity in the book about there was a man, he wanted to tithe. He was a very wealthy man. I think you said,
Actually, he wasn't that wealthy.
No, he wasn't? Okay.
No, he wasn't that wealthy.
So, but he was in a nursing home?
He was in a nursing home in Savannah and became a good friend of mine. Sure. He was an Assembly of God man from downstate, 5 or 6 hours away. And however, his family lived up here. So when it was time to go into a nursing home, his family decided that he should live closer to them. That is good.
Yeah.
It's also bad because all of his friends and his pastor live 5 hours, 6 hours away. I probably would have made the same decision. I'm not condemning them for the decision, but that put this man in a very awkward position because he didn't have a pastor anymore. And he was now in a nursing home, so he's not going to meet a new pastor. His health declined, and in walks Chaplain Dave. And he was so excited to meet a pastor. And he told me wonderful stories about faith and about his accepting Christ and his service at the church. He was a good man. Just loved him. And then one day he handed me money. He gave me $20. And, well, that's unethical to receive money. Unethical.
Right.
I don't take money. Hospice pays me. I don't take money.
Right.
And he got mad.
Yeah.
He got mad. He goes, I always tithe.
Yeah.
And it's important to me. So take the money. To me, it became a dignity issue. Sure. And I really believe that people needed to be always need to be treated with dignity. Every life has value. Wealthy, poor, white, black, Indian, Muslim, other faiths, there is a dignity that every person deserves.
Yeah.
And so it became a dignity issue for him to not be able to give. It became an ethical issue for me to receive.
It was like, what do we do?
What do we do?
A rock and a hard place.
Yeah. And so I took the money. I thanked him for the money.
Right.
I went to the administrators.
Straight to them. Yeah.
Went straight to the administrator, explained what happened, explained why I took the money. And I went to the bookkeeper and deposited the money back in his account.
Which is funny because when I read that part, the only thing I thought about is like, when it comes to tithes, you know, stuff, as a person in the church, I give tithes. Yeah, I know a lot of churches, they do the budget. So this is what we're spending the money on. For me, I'm supposed to give. And I feel like scripturally, it's like, I don't, honestly, I appreciate churches doing it, but I don't care what the church, I've already put my faith in this church, this leadership, I've submitted this leadership. You know, I pray that they're doing the right things with the money, but I don't need to know. But I thought about you. It's like he gives a pastor money. You decide as the pastor, I'm going to take this money and put it into his account.
Put it back in his account.
And it's like, and you kind of did and that's how it's done.
The bookkeeper says he never came down. He never comes down to check his account. So he didn't even know I did it. Yeah. I called his daughter, who's a lovely woman, very active in her church here in town, and I told her what I did. And it was like, he's always on me for not tithing. And I said, well, he tithed today. Yeah. And I wrote him a letter, a thank you letter for his generous gift from my church. Yeah. Okay.
Well, that all makes sense.
And I gave it to him. He just glowed. Yeah. Because he gave me $20 more. To this day, I don't think his daughter knew where he was getting the money. She asked me where he's getting the money. I said, every time he comes, he pulls $20 out of his wallet and gives it to me. And every time I'd go put it back in his account and bring him a letter. And he just loved that. It was a dignity thing for him. He was still feeling like he was contributing to the world. Yeah. And let's say there's a man at the end of life, and he's always been the hardworking, independent, strong man. And now he has to have his diapers changed.
Sure. Yep.
And the feeling he must have, I can't even change my pants.
Sure.
And hospice, when they come in, they want to treat that man with dignity too, and respect and honor him. And so the nurses and the aides are trained to treat people with dignity, even in the most undignified situations, and how to make this person feel comfortable and not like a piece of...
You haven't lost any value.
Right.
You're still the same person. You still have value. You still, you're still worth something, and that's so true. So hospice isn't just about till the day they die. There's things that go on beyond the death.
Yes. Yeah. Of course, when someone passes, the nurses are there, and the chaplain, if they want the chaplain there. My hospice that I worked for provided end-of-life care, vigil care, where we'd be at home for hopefully not too long, but for hours, sometimes a half day or so. We would wait and be with the family. Not all hospices provide that service. It's not required by the federal government. If you're looking for a hospice and that's important to you, ask them if they do it, okay? So, but we would, when someone passes, then you have usually a loved one. If it's a spouse or a child or a grandchild, whoever a caregiver was, they all feel different kind of grief. And in fact, spouses grieve different than children. A wife grieves differently for the loss of her husband than a daughter grieves for the loss of her father. Not that she doesn't grieve, but there's usually the anticipation or the knowledge that someday my dad's going to die. Okay. And that you usually have your own life around your family. And so it's not like your whole life has come to an end. But the wife who's been married for 60 years and her husband dies, it's like everything. And so what hospice provides is bereavement care. And so they will follow a patient's family, their loved ones, for up to 13 months. And honestly, a hospice is worth a lick. Will do it longer if necessary. Okay. with information and counseling. There's one man whose wife died here in St. Joseph, and she was just everything to him.
Yeah.
And she passed, and I would go see him, and then I would see him again, and I saw him every month, at least once, but most of the time, twice or three times a month. After about 6 months, he started riding with me when I would go to a nursing home and talk to nursing home patients while I was visiting clients, because he needed something to do. Yeah. It was his therapy.
Sure.
He thought he was being a blessing to the old coots at the nursing home.
Right. It was really for him.
It was his therapy.
Yeah.
And so there's all sorts of bereavement care and connections to grief groups, and most hospices have a grief group that they support where you can go to and provide literature. There's a couple in town. I really recommend an organization called Grief Share. There's 2 or 3 churches in town. There's one hospice, maybe 2 hospices that have Grief Share groups. That's more Christian based.
Yeah.
There are other Grief Share or grief groups that aren't Christian based. Go to one.
Yeah. So when you grieve, you even miss the things about the person you didn't like. I don't know if it was him in the book, but you talked about the Rush Limbaugh fan.
Oh, yeah. I love that lady.
Yeah. Because the husband.
Husband listened to Rush Limbaugh every day. Every day.
Yeah.
It was, and in fact, he didn't want me to even come over to the house while Rush Limbaugh was on, because there was no interrupting Rush Limbaugh. Love him or hate him, that's what he liked to do. And his wife let him listen to it.
But she
hated it. Couldn't stand it.
Well, she didn't even watch. She just didn't like his voice or something.
Didn't like his voice. She would do chores around the house, whatever. She called him that blowhard that he listens to. And then after he died, I go over to see her. Now I'm free to go in the afternoons now to see her because he's gone. Yeah. And as I come to the screen door, I can hear Rush Limbaugh in the house. It's like, what? And so she opens the door and she invites me in. She goes, turns off the radio. I said, you still listen to Rush Limbaugh? She goes, I don't like listening to it, but he did. And she had his urn sitting on the mantle. And so she goes, it makes me feel good.
Yeah. Yeah, I see that. I always joke, you could probably relate, we annoy our wives because we love them.
Because we love them. It's my spiritual gift.
If we go to glory before they do, they're going to miss that annoyance.
Yeah. I read a wonderful article once about the lady who regretted complaining about her husband not picking up his socks.
Wow.
And he died. And she said, oh, how I wish
she could pick up one more pair of socks.
I still had to pick up those socks.
Wow. Yeah.
And it's just so funny. And as I say, my dad said that wonderful thing to me.
Yeah.
And my dad was not very talkative. He didn't say a lot of wise things. He's pretty gruff most of the time. It's just the way he was. And after my mom died, of course, everybody becomes better after they die. Yeah. The memories, you remember the good things more than the bad things. Yeah. That's healthy and good. It's not bad. But we were sort of talking about Mom, how she did this and this and this and this. And my dad said, your mom wasn't no angel. It's like, come on, Dad. Yeah. He goes, I lived with her for 48 years or whatever. Yeah. He goes, she was no angel. She wasn't perfect. But he said, you really love somebody when you miss the things you didn't even like.
Yeah.
And I go, that was profound, Dad. That was profound. He really loved my mother. He even missed the things that he didn't like about her.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
And there wasn't a lot. They had a good marriage.
And going back to you talked early in the book about none of it's wrong. Because
there's no wrong way to grieve.
Yeah, and you talked about there was a daughter. She was upset with the dad, I think, because he kept going out to the cemetery.
Kept going out.
It's been way too many months. You need to talk to him. This ain't right. And you're like, yes, it is.
He had coffee with that woman every morning. Yeah. He ate breakfast, ate lunch with her. I don't even think they went out for dinner very often. They were together all the time for years.
That's a traumatic change in life.
Yes.
When you've been with someone 60, 70 years and all of a sudden there's no one on the side of the bed anymore.
Right.
That you may think it's not an easy transition.
Not easy.
No, and it can take a while.
I gotta tell you, I don't mind. Like I go on a mission trip once in a while for a week, or two with my, and my wife doesn't always go. The first few days are okay to be,
sure,
free, whatever. I get no one's taking my sheets from me. It's like woohoo. But after a few days, you sort of miss that no one's tugging on the sheet. And I can imagine having the knowledge that it'll never be the same.
Yeah. That you go to Mexico, you're going.
I know I'm coming back.
That idea that's
Well, not always when you go to Mexico.
saying that, it's like
I expect to come back.
right. It's like that. There's a time coming. For a lot of people, it's like that. There is no coming home. That was the last trip.
And that is so people need support.
Mm-hmm.
And what happens when someone dies? And I'm just going to pick, that a man dies, okay, and his wife is alone, and says, "Oh, if there's anything I can do, just give me a call." She's not going to call you.
Right.
That's sort of rude to call.
Yeah.
Most of the time, they're not going to call. Yeah. They might call their kids, but they're not going to call. For the first couple of weeks, everyone's there, with your hams and casseroles and all that stuff to bless you.
Yeah.
And then the next month, and no one even mentions him anymore. And life goes on.
Yeah.
And in fact, he would want life to go on.
Right.
He would want life to go on. He wouldn't want, most men or most people wouldn't want the world to end just because they're gone.
Yeah.
But it's hard to change everything.
Right. Yeah.
Holidays change. Everything changes.
Yeah. And when it comes to grieving, you said no way of grieving is wrong. But the problem is, I think a lot of people, they think that they're grieving wrong. And then what helps with hospice and chaplain is we can come in, you guys come in and be like, you're normal. You're okay.
You're normal. You're okay.
You're not weird. You think you're the only person in the world that hurts this way? You're not.
No. And then to talk the judgmental people down.
Yeah.
Because the lady who we mentioned earlier was judgmental of her father for grieving wrong.
Yeah.
It's like, no. Yeah, I had to talk to her too.
Yeah.
You're putting this pressure on your dad. There'll come a time where he may not go every day. And the time actually came where he was able to go less. And I hope at my funeral there's a lot of laughing. And in fact, I've recorded a little thing to play at the beginning of my funeral where I explain why I'm talking and saying some nice things because none of you like me as much as I do. Well, that's Dave Hugger.
Right.
I mean,
right.
No one will be surprised when they hear,
right.
None of you like me as much as I do.
Right. My final thing I kind of quoted here was, rejecting or delaying hospice will not change bad news. And I think if it says, you're like, well, duh. No, you think about it, it's true,
Right.
It's like, so hospice doesn't change that news at all. And what the doctor said is, we want you to live. And like I said, at the end of this, I think hospice just wants to help you live an abundant life day by day,
right,
until you go on. And that's what we're here. We're not even focused on that day. We're focused on today, and we're
focused on today.
We're helping your family. We're helping you, and it's a good thing. It's not a lack of faith. It's not a giving up. So.
Many people think hospice is the end.
Yeah,
and it isn't the end.
Mm-hmm.
It is just the next season.
Mm-hmm.
It's the next season.
What did you say in the book? You said something about like they're your tour guide.
Yeah, I use that example.
I liked that. It's like eternity. It's like especially not even just hospice, but the chaplain themselves. It's just one of faith. It's like I'm just your tour guide for
your next great adventure.
Yeah, and I'm just getting you ready, prepping you. I'm
right.
And it's gonna be good. And
it's gonna be good.
And I'm excited for you.
I'm a Detroit Tiger fan. I'm from Michigan, and Ernie Harwell was the radio announcer for the Tigers for years. And when he retired, and then he ends up on hospice, and they had Ernie Harwell Day at Detroit Tiger Stadium.
Okay.
And so he stands on home plate and he gives this great speech talking about his life being a great adventure, and he could barely talk, so he didn't talk long, but he talked about the great adventure of his life. He was a Christian man. And then he said, and I'm so excited for my next great adventure.
That's great.
And that's the way to think about it. I've had a great adventure and there's still more to come. Yeah. In fact, it's better.
Mm-hmm. And I think as we conclude this session, just understanding as Christian brothers, for us, Paul is saying, it's like, we don't grieve like the world grieves.
No.
Because we have a hope. And what's so great about that is for ourselves, but also for everyone, listening, is like, there is good news. Yeah. No one's perfect. Everyone's failed. No one's going to meet God's standard, but God knows that. And because he knows that, he took care of that. He paid the price on a cross that whoever would believe in him, can have that hope, who makes him Lord of their lives, things. And when we can have even that grief is healthy and it's good because it's like, I know someday I'm going to see you again, and it's wonderful. And I know I'm going to get to spend, like Smith Wigglesworth's wife, she's like, I've seen Jesus. You've not seen goodness like this. You've not seen peace like this. I'm not coming back. This is good. I want it. And we want that hope for everyone, so. And
Jory, I want to thank you for having me. And I want to remind people that you can get these books on Amazon.
There'll be a link in the description.
There's also thehospicechaplain.com, which is my webpage.
Yeah.
And you can buy the handbook in bulk.
Okay.
So if a hospice company wants to buy in bulk, they can get it a little less money.
And we'll get that link also in the description.
Okay, that'd be great.
Yeah.
And even a hospice company can order, if they order enough of them, they can even brand it. I take all of my stuff off. The rows, take it off, put their logo. The back can be all about them.
Awesome.
About all their company and what their company does, their phone number. And I would like to conclude with my hospice prayer. May every life be shown respect. May every soul find comfort. May every person be remembered. May every tear be honored. May every passing be peaceful.
Amen.
And that's my prayer for every one of my hospice clients and for people who are experiencing this situation in their life.
Sure. Amen.
Thank you, Jory.
Pastor David, I appreciate you coming on with me today. Hopefully, maybe in the future, we have some more conversations.
I can't wait.
That'd be a blast.
Let's keep talking about books.
Amen. Yeah, right? Amen. Guys, thank you so much for watching. It's been a great conversation. I really enjoyed it. I hope you guys have. Like I said, click those links if you're interested in the books, but also the website. And again, we're all about helping people win by making the truth popular. So we love you guys. Go out there and win. Have a great day.